Hi, everyone, and welcome to the fourth episode of The Follow Through. My name is Avery Brenna Crumrine, author of Intention into Action, and in the last episode, we talked about how the first step is smaller than you think. And that idea is really important because it's what actually gets you into action. It gets you moving. And it's what gets you out of your head and into doing something actually real. But what I want to talk about today is what happens after that. Because a lot of people do take that first step, but then they stop. And I think that's where a lot of people get confused because they assume starting is the hardest part. But honestly, it's not. Staying consistent in the idea is. When you take that first step and get into action, it feels so great. I mean, you're finally in motion. And whatever that first step is for you, whether it's finally sending that message you needed to send, or starting a project, or recording something for your podcast, or just in general, um, say you're going to work out. I mean, there's a moment when you're like, okay, I finally did it. I started on this goal that I wanted to achieve, and there's a sense of relief in that. A lot of time there's even a sense of excitement in that. You feel like you finally did what you said you were going to do. But then the next day comes, or the next time you're supposed to show up again, and it doesn't feel the same. It's just not new anymore. It's not exciting as the same way it was when you first started. It starts to feel like a sense of effort that you have to put in. And a lot of people stop here because, not because they can't do it, but because they don't want to. And it doesn't feel how they expected it to feel. And I feel like this is something that not enough people talk about because we hear so much about starting. It's just start, take the first step and go for it. I mean, that's the only way you're going to accomplish your goal, I understand. And that completely matters. Hence, the third episode being all about taking your first step. But what happens after you start is what actually determines whether anything changes in your life. Because starting once doesn't create results most of the time. It doesn't build consistency, it doesn't change who you are. It's what you do after that first step that actually matters. And I've seen this so many times show up in my own life. Even going back to when I played football in high school, there were so many days you're exhausted, you're tired, you're sore, you don't want to go to the practice sometimes. It didn't feel exciting, it wasn't new anymore. It's just something that you have to do, and that's exactly the point. Because no one builds anything by only showing up when they feel like it. You build something by showing up when you don't. And I think that's where even I understood it on a different level because it wasn't about motivation, it wasn't about how I was feeling that day. It's just I was doing what I said I was going to do. Because we've gotten so used to connecting action with a feeling. Like, I'll do it when I'm ready, I'll feel motivated, and then I'll start. But if you actually look at anything meaningful you've done in your life, it probably didn't come from only acting when you felt like it. And I've experienced this in other ways too. Even with something like Girl Scouts. I set a goal one year to sell 1,000 boxes in one of the seasons, and there were so many moments where I didn't feel like going out again. You're exhausted, you're going door to door, you're staying out with a table late at night, and you're just talking to people, you're hearing no a lot, and a lot of times you don't feel like just putting yourself in that same situation again. But you have to if you're wanting to hit that goal. And looking back now, that's such a clear example of this because it wasn't one moment that made a difference. It was being able to show up again and again, even when it didn't feel exciting anymore, even when I was tired or I didn't feel like it. And that's what this really comes down to, because starting is one decision, but continuing is a series of decisions. And those decisions aren't going to always feel good. And following through isn't just about starting something. It's about continuing even when that feeling changes. Even when it doesn't feel exciting or new, or you don't feel motivated to do it anymore. And I think a lot of people end up stopping because their expectations are off. They expect it to feel easier once they've started. They expect it to feel good every time. They expect to stay motivated. But when it doesn't, they assume something's wrong. But it's just part of the process. In that moment when it gets harder, that's not where you're supposed to stop, it's where it starts to matter. That's where you're going to build your consistency and your discipline, and where you can prove to yourself that you can keep going. Because anyone can start something once, but not everyone continues. Not everyone shows up again when it feels different to them. And that's the difference between intention and results. Is the first step gets you into action, but what you do after that is what creates your outcome. And when it gets harder, which it most likely will, Don't restart. Don't go back to planning everything again. Don't convince yourself that you need a better time or a better version of yourself. You're just needing to continue, even if it's not perfect, even if it's just another small step forward. So for today, just notice this. Notice what happens after you start something. Notice when it starts to get a little harder, when that momentum is gone, when it feels a little less exciting. And instead of taking that as a sign to stop, see it as the moment where your goal is actually beginning. And in the next episode, I'm going to be talking to Olympic gold medalist Michelle Cameron Coulter. And her story is a perfect example of what this actually looks like over time. Not starting, but continuing. Showing up again and again and building something through consistency. Because intention doesn't change anything. Putting it into action does. I'll see you guys next week.